This is today's workshop presentation is called Virtual Cemeteries. It is a joint venture between the Columbus-Lowndes Public Library and the Society of Mississippi Archivists. Today's presenter is Dee Dee Baldwin. Ms. Baldwin has worked at Mississippi State University Libraries since 2007. First in manuscripts, and now as the history research librarian and liaison to the Honors College. Genealogy has been her hobby for about 20 years. So, without further ado, I will turn things over to you, Dee Dee.
Thanks, Mona. Hey, y'all. So let me close this little notepad note that I had up here. So now what y'all should be seeing is the first slide of my PowerPoint with the comparison between Find a Grave and BillionGraves. Is that what y'all are seeing now? Sometimes it takes a second to pop up.
Yes.
Okay, good. So what I'm going to do in this presentation is first we're going to do a really quick comparison of the two sites. Then I'm going to show you the Find a Grave website. Then I'm going to show you the Find a Grave app that you can use on your phone or tablet. Then we're going to look at the BillionGraves app, and then we're going to go back to the web and look at the BillionGraves website. It does have a logical order to it. You'll see, I promise. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Find a Grave. It's been around for a long time. BillionGraves only came out, in the past several years, so it's kind of new. Find a Grave also shows up in Hints on Ancestry, so a lot of people know about it. So Find a Grave is focused more on making memorial pages, and I'll show you more about that when we look at the website. BillionGraves, their focus is on going to a cemetery and documenting every headstone in that cemetery. So it's not so much on making nice memorial pages and leaving virtual flowers. It's more about just having those names and dates, and that's it. Both sites are free. I'm going to mute somebody on the phone. Both sites are free. Find a Grave, there's an optional $5. You can choose to sponsor somebody's page if you want to remove the ads. Because it's a free site, they do have a lot of tacky ads everywhere. So if you want to sponsor somebody's page, you can spring for $5 to do that. It's a one-time payment. BillionGraves has an optional subscription with just some extra features. And one thing that's cool about BillionGraves is that if you take a certain number of photos or do a certain number of transcriptions for them, you can earn free months, and I've done that a lot. So you don't have to pay for the subscription if you contribute to the site, so that's really nice. Find a Grave records show up in Hints on Ancestry and Family Search, so you've probably seen them on there. BillionGraves records show up in Hints on Family Search. On Find a Grave, you can add photos of headstones either through the app or upload them through the website. You can do it either way. To add photos to BillionGraves, you have to do it with their app. The reason for that is that they tag every photo with GPS information, and you're going to see on their website when I show it to you how they have the locations of every headstone in that cemetery recorded because of doing it that way. All right, so I'm going to switch over now from PowerPoint to my browser. Give me just 1 minute. WebEx is a little bit clunky. It might take a second to pop up. But in a second, you should be able to see the Find a Grave website. By the way, if you have a question at any point, you can type it into the chat, or you can unmute your mic and ask it that way. Either way is fine. Don't worry about interrupting me or anything like that. If you have a question about something we're talking about, just jump on in. Okay, so this is the Find a Grave website, and you can see in the upper right corner, it has my name. I'm already logged in. If you've used this site a lot, you're probably already familiar with a lot of this stuff, so we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. But Find a Grave You can go on it to look at famous burials, like you can see over here on the left side, they have on this day, Katharine Hepburn died. So you could go to that if you wanted to and view her virtual memorial. You can leave her flowers. You can see that Find a Grave links family members. 4,000 people have left her flowers. A lot are doing it today because they're coming here from the main page. So you can leave messages and virtual flowers that way. Let me go back to the main page. If you want to search for someone's memorial, you can do this right here on the main page. You can also search for a particular cemetery by clicking on Cemeteries up here at the top. And you can just enter the first word or two of the cemetery. So if I want, let me do Friendship Cemetery in Columbus. I'm just going to type Friendship, and then I'm going to say Columbus. And once you start typing, they're going to suggest a place name. So you see it pops up. And they go by city, county, and state. So we're going to select Columbus-Lowndes and say search. And we have Friendship Cemetery. And it looks like people have been working on it because it's 88% photographed. Of course, that's of the memorials that are listed on there. I'm not sure if that's all the people that are actually buried in Friendship Cemetery. But we can click on this. And when you go to a cemetery, it's going to tell you how many people are requesting photos for that cemetery. You can see right here, there's 86 photo requests currently for Friendship Cemetery. One thing to be aware of is that sometimes people request photos of headstones that are not there. There are several reasons for that. Sometimes they just have a mistake. You know, they're just making a mistake about where the person's buried. Often it's because the headstone's not there anymore, or it's unreadable, and whoever goes to find it just can't see it anymore. Sometimes they get the burial from an obituary, but the person never had a headstone at all. That's very common. So sometimes you'll go to fill a photo request and you won't be able to find it. And they do have a way to report a problem with the request. So if you go to find one, you can, let me open this up and show you. If I went to the cemetery and I found a problem with one of these, they've changed the layout of this, but you can click on the photo request and say, they have a variety of problems you can report, like this headstone isn't here, the headstone is unreadable, different things like that. And you can see you can also claim requests, and if you click fulfill, that gives you an option to upload whatever image you might have taken. So that's the cemetery view. If you want to look at the all the headstones that are in the cemetery, if you're looking for a specific person, you can use this form here. But if you come up here to memorials where it says how many are added, if you click that link, that gives you a list of all the people in alphabetical order by last name listed in that cemetery. So you can see some of them have headstones, some of them have pictures of the person. And like I said, Friendship currently has 12,000 listed. That's not necessarily everybody that's buried there. It's just how many people have added on the site. So if you want to volunteer for Find a Grave, if you register on the site, you can come up and click on your name up here in the top right corner. This internet's going kind of slow. Let me just go to my profile. That's not what I want. Okay, they've changed the layout on this, sorry. So if you go to your name up here and click on account, they used to have a thing where you could just go to another page, but don't worry about it. So if you come over here to photo volunteer and click on that, you can enter your zip code. You do that part in your profile. And then if you want to volunteer for the site, you can check this box. You can also choose the option to email you every time they have new photo requests. I have that unchecked. I used to have it checked, but I was getting too many emails, so I unchecked it. But if you want to get an email every time there's a new request close to you, and you can choose how close it is. So if it's within 5 miles, you can get an email. I don't recommend getting an email every time there's a request within 50 miles. You will get a ton of emails. And then you can set your location. You can use a zip code or pin it on a map. I used to have mine set with a zip code, but I guess they changed it to a pin on a map. I'm not sure why they did that. You can also come over here to set your site preferences. This is just a layout type thing. But yeah, the main page you want to look at here is the photo volunteer. Find a Grave does have a place where you can transcribe things, but transcribe headstones, but not many people use it, and it's kind of clunky. I mean, maybe they'll improve it in the future, but I don't ever transcribe headstones on Find a Grave. I just don't find it helpful in any way. But if you do want to do that, you can come up to Contribute, and you can choose this option to transcribe photos. But again, I don't recommend doing that. If you have an account and you've added people, sometimes people will send you suggestions for information to change on some of the profiles you manage. So you can click here on Suggested Edits. You can also view your suggested edits up here in the top right. They have like this little pencil icon. You can also click that to view those. And they have these where you can approve them all at once. And that's usually what I do. I select all and then accept. So if you're ever on a profile page, let me just go to a random memorial. Let's just go to this one here. If you're on a page and you happen to know that some information is wrong, like they transcribed the headstone wrong, or you want to add a biography or something like that, you can click on this edit button and it gives you a form. You can change whatever needs to be changed, and then they'll send that edit to the person who manages the memorial. If you're looking at a memorial and it's one that you want a headstone photo for, it doesn't have one already and you'd like to see one, you can click this request photo button. So this happens to be one that I added, photo added by Dee Dee. I've been working on Greenwood Cemetery for a long time. I haven't been there in a while, but I was close to being done with that cemetery. I think I only had like 1 or 2 more sections to do. But anyway, there's people up north who have taken photos for me. A lot of my dad's ancestors were from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and up in upstate New York, and I've never been up there, but I have photos of their headstones because Find a Grave volunteers took those photos for me. So you can kind of pay it forward and take photos for other people as well. I've done most of the cemeteries that I've been able to find in Oktibbeha County, which is where I live. I know there's a lot of people in our region who take these photos. I know somebody is working on Friendship Cemetery right now because their photos come up on BillionGraves. When I go on there to transcribe, I've been seeing photos from Friendship. And I know that there's somebody near Louisville who takes photos. But you can always visit a cemetery and see if it looks like someone has been taking photos there, especially these small country cemeteries that are like down dirt roads and only have about 100 headstones. Those are the ones that really need somebody to go out and document them. Okay, so that's the main thing on Find a Grave. I know a lot of people are familiar with this site, so I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on it. Does anybody have a question about anything on Find a Grave? How to use it, or anything you might have run into over the years? If you think of something, you can ask it. You don't have to ask it right now. So I'm going to switch back over to the PowerPoint. And y'all, that should be popping back up for y'all in a second. Can everybody see these images from the Find a Grave app now? It should have popped up by now.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mona. If I was doing this in a live presentation, I would try to have the gear to hook up my phone to the screen so that I could show you the app in real time, but I don't have a way to do that in a virtual presentation, so I took screenshots. If you have the app on your phone, you can follow along, but these are the basic screens you'll be seeing if you add this app. So here's the main page all the way on the end. It's very user-friendly, it's very intuitive. Basically, you can see where you want to go. Memorial search, cemetery search. It's very clear what you're looking at. If you click on cemetery search, you're going to see this second screen. And I took this screenshot yesterday at my house. And this just shows you how many cemeteries have been added in the area of Starkville on Find a Grave. So this is showing me every cemetery within a certain mile radius. And you can zoom in and out on this map screen. So on this third screen, I zoomed in a little bit, and I'm the little blue dot. When you see an orange symbol, that means that the cemetery has no requests. And if you see a green headstone, that means that the cemetery does have open photo requests. So, you know, if you're trying to do a quick search to see what cemeteries need to have photos taken, that's kind of a quick way to tell. Some people for Find a Grave, they will just go and try to fill photo requests. They'll walk through the cemetery and look for that particular headstone that somebody wants. When I go to a cemetery to fill a photo request, I go ahead and photograph the entire cemetery, unless it's a huge, like Friendship Cemetery or Oddfellows. Most of the cemeteries around here are small, sort of church-related cemeteries with only 100 or 200 headstones. And so when I go to fill a photo request, if I'm driving all the way out to whatever this cemetery is, especially if it's down a long dirt road, I will go ahead and just photograph the entire cemetery. But, you know, that's up to you. You can go and search for particular headstones, or you can photograph all of them. Or maybe some people I know, they go to cemeteries and they just photograph the old cool ones. However you want to do it. Okay, so next slide. When you click on a cemetery name, this is the screen you're going to see, this kind of orangey screen. It's going to show you an image of the cemetery if somebody has taken a picture of it. It's going to have a link to go to view the photo requests. This is where you can click to see the memorials that have been added. You can add headstone photos from within the app. If you click on somebody's name, in this case, I clicked on the name of somebody who had a photo request. You can click this camera icon and add a photo right there in real time. You can also just take the photo on your phone and upload it to the website later. However you want to do it. It probably depends on whether or not you're getting a good enough signal, whether you want to use your data to upload photo files. You know, everybody's different on that kind of thing. So you can take photos in the Find a Grave app if you want, but you don't have to. So like I said, the Find a Grave app is very simple and straightforward. While we're talking about apps, I'm going to go ahead and show you the BillionGraves app. Just like Find a Grave, the BillionGraves app is very straightforward. It's pretty easy to tell where you want to go. Find headstones, find cemeteries, take pictures, view photo requests, see the photos you currently have taken. Very simple to use. The first time you use the BillionGraves app, I recommend clicking on Settings, and that's going to bring up this second screen. Before you start taking any pictures with the BillionGraves app, you are going to want to tweak some of these settings depending on your preferences. So this first setting, Preview After Capture, I keep that on. It slows you down like a split second just to show you that photo popping up, but to me it's worth it just to make sure that the photo took. There's an option to upload images automatically. I keep that turned off because if that's turned on, it's really going to eat up your battery, and it's also going to use up a ton of your data. And also, if you're way out in a little country cemetery, you're probably not going to have a signal to upload those photos anyway. And speaking of signal, that has been a problem for me occasionally with BillionGraves because it tags photos with GPS. If you are out at a cemetery that's so out in the country that there's no kind of phone signal, you probably won't be able to use the BillionGraves app because it can't get a GPS signal. And it'll give you a little error message to tell you that it can't get a signal. So just be aware of that. That is something that is kind of a little problem with BillionGraves. That's only happened to me once or twice. I've gone out to a cemetery and then I didn't have a signal, so I couldn't photograph it. I went ahead and photographed it for Find a Grave, but I could not photograph it for BillionGraves. And then this option to transcribe your own images, that's totally based on your preference. I enjoy transcribing headstones and also just being kind of A picky person, I want to make sure it's done right. And you know the thing, if you want it done right, you have to do it yourself. So I like to transcribe my own images. If you pick that option, they give you 2 weeks to transcribe your photos, and if you haven't done them in 2 weeks, then they put them out in the public for other people to transcribe. But I think 2 weeks is a good long time to give you to transcribe them yourself. There's other options you could change here, but I've never messed with them. These top 3 are the main ones that you're going to want to make sure you have them set the way you want before you do anything else in the app. All right, so moving on. Next slide. All right, so if you go to the option to find cemeteries, you can see this looks almost exactly like Find a Grave. You're going to be a little blue dot on a map, and it's going to show you nearby cemeteries. You can also see that not as many cemeteries have been entered into BillionGraves yet, so some of them you will have to enter yourself, and we'll talk about that in a second. So if I click on Oddfellows Cemetery in Starkville, this little image pops up, and I can click on that cemetery, and then it brings up this third screen. Just like with Find a Grave, there will be an image of the cemetery. If somebody has taken one, it tells you the location. Oops, I went ahead, skipped ahead of myself. It shows you how many images are in the cemetery. So if you're out to photograph a cemetery and it's not there yet, for this example that I used yesterday, there's an old African-American cemetery in Starkville that's right across from Oddfellows, and you can see on the blue dot on the map, I was standing there. It's called Brush Arbor or Starkville Colored Cemetery. It goes by both names, and it had not been entered yet. So I went up here and I clicked this little plus sign. This plus sign is what you use to add a cemetery. You type in the name of the cemetery, and if you know the address, you can do that. But what I do is I just say use my location, and it uses a GPS location. One thing to be aware of is that if you do add a cemetery this way on the site, they're not approved instantly. So if possible, plan ahead and enter the cemetery on the website. I'm going to show you how to do that in a second. Enter the cemetery on the website before you go, and that way it will already be on the map and ready to go when you visit. If you're not able to do that, BillionGraves does have a way to move your photos. You can edit a photo and move it to the correct cemetery if you need to. Okay, so when you click the icon on the BillionGraves main menu to take photos, I was not able to get screenshots of any of this because when you press the screenshot button, it takes a picture in the app. So I'm just going to have to kind of describe it to you. But fortunately, it's very easy. If you did download the app and you're looking at it right now, you'll see it looks just like your camera screen on your phone. It moves around like you're taking a picture, and it has a big round button that you press to take a picture. You're also going to see some little icons. The main ones you need to know about is there's a little chain link icon, and what that does is it links related photos together. And this is really important. Some people don't use it, and it's very frustrating because you go to transcribe photos and they took a picture of a stone that only has somebody's first name on it. You know how sometimes you have those grave sites where they have like one big stone with the family's last name, and then they'll just have individual headstones with only the first names? They didn't link together the smaller headstones with the headstone that had the family's last name on it. And so the only thing you can transcribe is the person's first name. Other reasons you would want to link images is sometimes on the back of a headstone, they'll have the people's children listed, or they might have another quote or epitaph. Sometimes, like on an obelisk monument, you might have names on all sides of the obelisk. So those would be ones you want to link together. So the way you do that is you take a picture, and then if you want to link another image to that picture, you press the little chain link icon, and it'll turn a different color. I think it turns blue if I remember right. It turns a different color, and then the next picture you take will be linked up with the one you just took. And you can link multiple images that way. If you want to keep adding images to that same set, You just keep pressing the chain icon between your photos. Another reason you might want to use this is a lot of times in the South, somebody will have a regular headstone, and then down at the foot of the grave, they'll have like a separate, one of those flat military headstones. So that's another thing you would want to link together. So do please, please use the chain link icon to link images together if they should be connected. Another icon you're going to want to know about on the take a picture screen is the little pencil icon. And that lets you transcribe the image on the spot. This comes in really handy if you're looking at a very old headstone that has a lot of moss or whatever grown on it. And sometimes you can only read it if you get right up next to it and kind of use your finger to feel out what the letters or the numbers are. They're just really hard to read. And you think that if somebody's only looking at a picture, they're not going to be able to read it. So you can transcribe it on the spot. So you can add the name and the date of birth and all that, and then go up to the top and click save. That's really handy. And if you're taking a picture of a grave that you think people won't be able to read it just from the photo, you really are going to want to transcribe it right there on the spot where you can get close and really see what it says. Okay, so that's the main thing you need to know about the BillionGraves app. Once you're ready to upload your photos, and again, I recommend doing that once you get home. If you want to, you can have them upload automatically, but that will just chew up your battery and your phone data. If you're not on an unlimited data plan or you have limited data in any kind of way, it's really going to eat it up. So wait till you get home and get on your Wi-Fi or whatever. But once you're ready to upload your photos, you can click that photo button back on the main screen, and I'll scroll back up to it so you can look at it. If this thing will go, let me check this out. Back on this main screen, see this photo button in the bottom right? If you click that, it'll show you the photos you took, and there's an upload button. So once you get home, just click that upload button and they'll start uploading to the website. Once they are uploaded, you can delete them from your phone. And again, it's very easy to see how to do that. They have an option to edit photos, and you select all and remove. So if you don't have a lot of space on your phone, you can remove those photos. I know some people who use BillionGraves who keep all of their photos on their phone just kind of as a backup, but you don't have to do that. Once they're on the site, you're all clear. Okay, so that's the BillionGraves app. And again, for BillionGraves, you have to take the photos with their app because they tag them with GPS. And with BillionGraves, like I said at the beginning, their goal is to document entire cemeteries. They're not just sending you out to take a photo of a headstone that somebody requested. They want you to go stone by stone, section by section, and take a picture of everything. If you look on their website, this is really a popular project with Boy Scout groups doing community service and other types of groups doing community service. They'll send, 10 or 20 boys out and each take a section, and they'll photograph an entire huge cemetery in an afternoon or something. Or you can do like me and head out to a big cemetery and just do a section every weekend or something. I did Oddfellows in Starkville that way, and I've done most of Greenwood in West Point that way. But yeah, however you choose to do it. Does anybody have a question about either one of these apps, Find a Grave or BillionGraves, before we go on to the BillionGraves website? Everybody good so far? Okay, well, if you think of anything, again, just break in and ask away. So I'm going to switch us back over. Y'all should be seeing the BillionGraves website now. It might take a second to pop up, but it should be on there. Okay, so when you're logged into BillionGraves, this is the screen you will see. It'll show you how many transcriptions you've done, how many images you've added. It has this nice little graph that shows you how many people you've helped. I don't know how they figure that you've helped these people. Maybe it's just somebody that looked at a photo you added or transcribed. I guess that must be how it's done. You can scroll down and look at all the photos you've taken. So if you click on See All, it'll take you to this page where you can sort the cemeteries by name or date. This is going to take a second to pop up. There it is. So if you're looking for pictures that you took in a particular cemetery, you can find it in alphabetical order. Or if you want to see your most recent photos, you can do date, and this will show you the most recent ones you took. So yesterday when I went to Brush Arbor in Starkville, you can see that's June 28th, 2020. You can see the last time I went and took pictures was in January. I've been kind of lazy this year. Mostly because I've taken photos of all the nearby cemeteries, and so now when I photograph cemeteries, I have to drive way out somewhere, and I don't do it as often. But anyway, yesterday I went to Starkville Colored Cemetery, Brush Arbor, and took some images to use as examples, so those are going to show on the latest ones that I've taken. So let's go back to the main page. So if you go to BillionGraves and you're looking for somebody, oops, I completely left the site. If you're looking for somebody in particular, you can just do a search just like you would on Find a Grave. That's under this Research tab up here at the top. You can do a person search or a cemetery search. And again, if you're planning to go out to some out-of-the-way cemetery near you, I recommend doing a cemetery search to see if it's on the site yet, and go ahead and add it if it's not, so that way when you go to it, it will be there. So I'm going to click on Cemetery Search. And does anybody know the name of a cemetery in Lowndes County that might be kind of a small cemetery that might not be on this map yet that I can do a search for? Maybe some small church near you or anything like that? Young Family Cemetery. Let's try. There's one coming up in Virginia. Let's just try Young. Ooh, there's not anyone nearby. Let's go back and zoom into Lowndes County. I don't know where that took us, Mona. Let's go to Columbus. I'm going to use Friendship Cemetery to take us to Columbus. All right. This thing's being difficult. I'm going to tell this to recenter me. You know what? I'm going to click back and go back to this map. Mona, you sent us you sent us to some other state. Let's do but that's what happens. We're going to go back to cemetery search. No, that's okay. No, that's okay. It just shows you how kind of clunky this part of it is. I'm going to drag this map over to Columbus. And let's see, you suggested Waverly. Let's see where Waverly. I know it's somewhere around up around, isn't it around West Point? Oh, there it is, Waverly. Let's zoom in. Waverly might be on here. I'm going to click this. There's Young Cemetery. Okay, so Young Cemetery has been added on here. I don't know why it wasn't coming up. Oh, I think that thing said that it only brings up cemeteries with 100 or more names. So if you know where the cemetery you're going to is, you might want to just use this method to find it instead of trying to type it in. Let's see if, yeah, there's Waverly. It looks like Waverly Cemetery has no entries in it yet. So somebody could go and photograph Waverly. Pitchland Cemetery has no images. And this Lee Cemetery. So yeah, you're going to want to go in here and add the cemetery before you go out to it. Let's say that you know some cemetery is right here on the map. You can right click it and add it. You see it's going to put a pin there. You can enter the name, and then you can edit the boundaries of the cemetery and all that. And then that way when you go out to it, it'll already be there. Okay, so also under research, you can go to person search. So let me just do Who's somebody famous in friendship? Stephen Lee. And he's going to be in United States, Mississippi, Lowndes, and search. And it brings up a whole mess of names that I did not ask for. Let's go to the next page. We're looking for Stephen. I guess nobody's added that one yet. That's kind of surprising. I would have figured somebody had already added him, especially since people have been working on Friendship Cemetery, but apparently he has not been added yet. So here's somebody in Friendship, Robert Ward Lee. You can click on their name. And you can see this is very different from Find a Grave. Find a Grave has those nice biographies and they link family members and you can leave virtual flowers and messages and things. BillionGraves, it's just names, dates, very, very basic. You can scroll down and see nearby graves. Not super helpful, but you know, I've never found that to be super helpful, but you never know. You might see members of a family buried together. Okay, so let's go to Friendship Cemetery. You can click on the link. I want to show you what their GPS thing looks like. So we are going to click to, where's it at? They keep changing stuff around on these sites. They used to have a thing where you could just zoom in. I know you can do this on the app, on the map, you can just zoom in, but they have changed this around on me. Let me go back to Rufus, or whoever this was, Robert Ward. You can see that there is a small version of the map on his page where you can zoom in on that. I guess it's just not going to show you the entire cemetery. You can zoom in on this part of it, and you can click all these little dots to see where these graves are. And you know, this is really handy to know where a headstone is in a huge cemetery like Friendship. Having that GPS cemetery is very helpful. You can click on each of these markers and it pops up and tells you who that is buried there. So I guess these are just, you know, the graves that are near him. On the phone app, you can zoom in on the entire cemetery, but apparently you can't do that on the website anymore. Unless it's one of the extra features that you have to be a subscriber to view. That might be the case. So, all right, now let's talk about volunteering for BillionGraves. We've talked about taking photos on the app. That's part of it. But another way that you can volunteer for BillionGraves, if you don't want to go out in Mississippi heat and take photos, you can also just transcribe, just sitting in your living room at home while you're watching TV or something. So you can come over here to volunteer in this top menu and go to transcribe. And it's going to show you if there are any photos to transcribe near you, it's going to show you those first. And you can see it's coming up with my own photos that I took yesterday. So I'm going to skip, this is kind of one that's hard to read. Let me skip over to one that's a little easier to read. Okay, so let's say you're getting this photo. They have controls up in the top left if you need to rotate the image. So I'm going to rotate to make it straight. You can zoom in and out. And this is taking a second for some reason. Come on. Oh, okay. Will you please turn the right way? All right, I'm just going to keep it sideways. So, because it's not turning for some reason. So the name on this stone is Jimmy, and you can just start typing. Now it's going to turn. Wow. So you can zoom in. You can just scroll in with your mouse, or you can use these manual plus and minus things up here, but I just use the little wheel on my mouse to zoom in. So this is Jimmy Cooper, and he was born March 12th, 1867, and died June 21, 1882. So you can enter that. All you really have to enter is that basic information. But if you want to, you can add, this headstone happens to be one that mentions other family members. So you can click others not buried here. Again, this part is optional. Some people don't bother with this, but you can if you want. So we're going to say Alfred Cooper, and that is the father. I'm moving WebEx boxes out of my way. So that's little Jimmy's father. So we're going to say add. And then we have Annie Cooper, and that's the mother. So that's one thing you can do. You can add family members that are listed on the stone. If there's an epitaph, you can add that. Let's see if I can read it. Then parents, dear. Then parents, dear, dry up. It's hard to read. No longer linger. It's too hard for me to read, so I'm not going to worry with it right now. But if you can read the epitaph, you can click epitaph notes and add that. If you're looking at a military stone, you can click add military info, and you can put, sometimes it'll say like Sergeant, U.S. Army, World War II, whatever. You can transcribe that there. There's also, if you scroll down, there's this part that says advanced mode. And this is where you add things like a prefix, like if it's doctor or reverend. If the person is a junior or a senior, this is where you would add suffix. This is also where you would come to add a woman's maiden name if it's on the stone. And a lot of stones, especially in the South, have a marriage date, so you can add that as well. So make sure you remember to switch between simple mode and advanced mode. Some people don't bother when they transcribe, and it's really annoying to find a headstone that's listed like this, because his last name was not Cooper Sr. That is not his last name, but they're just too lazy to click into advanced mode and add it as a suffix, so they just add it here. And it's really annoying. Please don't do that. If you decide to volunteer for the site, please don't do that. Please take the 1 second it takes to go to advanced mode and add it where it's supposed to be. So once the headstone is the way you want it, you click save, and then you can go on. Oh, this person has been added to Family Search already. Accept. Sometimes once you add someone, it'll give you this little box if they think this person has already been added. Sometimes it's a match, and sometimes it's so off that you have no idea why they're asking you to match them together, and then you can just click reject. If you're not sure, click reject. If everything matches exactly, go ahead and accept it. And then we're going to close that, and we're going to go to the next image. I enjoy transcribing photos. I do literally thousands of them. Just because it's kind of a relaxing, mindless thing to do if you're bored, or you just want to do some small thing to help in some way. This one's hard to read. I'm going to come back to that one. Let's find another easy one to read. Failed to load. I don't know why that happened. Sometimes when they're really low on images, you're going to find that no matter how many times you click next, you're not going to find any that are in English. That happens a lot in the winter, especially when people aren't going out in the cold, especially up north. They're not going out to take photos. And so sometimes there's just no photos to transcribe. But in the spring and summer, there's always a ton. I keep coming to ones that I can't do real quick for you. Here's an example of a set that I linked together. Remember, if you use that chain link, it links them together. I wanted to link these together because they were together in this nice little family plot with a fence around it. So I went ahead and linked them. So you can just move between the images by clicking the photos at the bottom. And let me turn this one and hope it turns. I don't know why it does this slow on turning. So this person's name is John Drake, born August 1872, died January 25, 1904. Thou art not dead, though in the grave. Got a nice long epitaph. And then the next person, if you want to add more than one person, there's this button here, add person. So you'll use that a lot when you have those double headstones with a husband and wife buried on them. So this person has a different last name, but they're together, so I linked them together. N.B. Bell, born Aug 3161, died Feb. I don't know. So I'm going to leave that. It's the 20 something, but since I don't know for sure, I'm going to leave it blank. And it looks like 1907. All right, so I'm going to click save. And it saves both of those together. So that's an example of linking images. The reason these are coming up in Family Search is because when I took photos in this cemetery years ago, I also added these people on Family Search because I like to do research on people in historically Black cemeteries. So I added all of the names that I had taken into Family Search to try to find more information about them. So that's why it's popping up like that. So that's how you transcribe photos on BillionGraves. And these are coming up because I took them myself, but if you've never taken any photos, it'll start off showing you photos that are near you. So if you're in Columbus right now and the person who's been working at Friendship has uploaded another batch, you're probably going to see a bunch of photos from Friendship. If there's none near you, you're going to see photos from all over the United States. Last week I transcribed a bunch from North Dakota, so you're going to see some from all over the place, which to me is really cool. A couple other things to be aware of. If you see a headstone pop up in a different language, one thing you'll see a lot are Hebrew headstones, especially up in New York. There's this language icon right here, this little blue A and like a Chinese or a Japanese symbol. I don't know what it is. You can click this button and you can set a language on the stone. So if it's Hebrew, you can choose Hebrew. You're going to see a lot of Chinese and Japanese stones. And if you're anything like me, I can't tell the difference between Chinese and Japanese, so I don't do those because I don't want to set a wrong language. Hebrew is very easy to tell. Greek is pretty easy to tell. If you're not sure, don't set a language. But if you do know what it is, go ahead and set it. And that way, if somebody is coming up here to volunteer, you can see up in the top, you can set what kind of headstones you want to see. And so some people, they know that BillionGraves has thousands of Hebrew and Chinese and Japanese, especially stones. And so if they can read those languages, they will come up here and they will choose to only see stones in those languages so they can help that way. So if you know somebody who reads those languages, tell them that BillionGraves needs their help very badly. So set the language if you can't read it, and then just anytime you want to skip an image, you can't read it or it's in another language or some other problem, you can just click next until you get to one you can read. If there's a problem with an image, there's this little red flag. Problems include sometimes the photo is blurry because the person moved their phone too fast when they were taking the picture. Sometimes that you just cannot read that headstone. Sometimes people upload photos of the entire cemetery, but they put it in the wrong place. They upload it as a headstone photo instead of a cemetery photo. So you can choose this option and it sends the photo to the right place. Sometimes they take a picture of something that's not a headstone. Sometimes it's by accident. Sometimes I don't really know why they did it. Sometimes there's no information to transcribe. Like sometimes it's one of those little footstones with just like EB on it or just initials. For that, you can put no information to transcribe or not a headstone, either one. And then sometimes you can just click other if it has some other problem. I tend to report images as other if it's one of those cases where they didn't link images, where it's a headstone with only a first name and they didn't link the image with the last name. So I'll go ahead and transcribe what's there. Like I'll put the first name and the dates and I'll save it, but I will also flag the image so that they know that there's a problem with it. All right, so those are the basics of using these websites. I like to encourage people to use them, especially if you're interested in genealogy. I mean, they're great for research, but I also like to encourage people to volunteer for them. You can choose which site you want to use. You can do what I do. I use both. What I do is I go to a cemetery, and since BillionGraves requires you to use their app, I use the BillionGraves app to take all the pictures. I don't use my camera's phone. I use the BillionGraves app to take all the pictures. And then what I do is you can save your images. So I can right click this and save it just like any other image on the internet. So I'll save the image to my computer and then I'll also upload it to Find a Grave. So I add things to both sites. It can take a while and it can be kind of tedious. Obviously, you don't have to, but if you do want to, you can take images or you can volunteer for both sites. So you can choose to do the Find a Grave way and just go to a cemetery and walk around and try to fill headstone requests, or you can do the BillionGraves option and just go in and take a picture of everything. So take your pick. Any way that you choose to help is awesome. Any way you choose to help is awesome. So that is all I need to say, unless anybody has any questions or comments or anything.
Yeah, does anyone have any questions for Dee Dee?
I'm going to paste my email address into the chat. If you would like a copy of the PowerPoint that showed kind of the comparison of the two sites and showed the screenshots of the apps, just send me an email and I'll send you the PowerPoint. I'm also recording this presentation, and Mona, I think, is going to send out the link once it's uploaded and everything. So,
Yes.
yeah. But if you want the PowerPoint, just email me at the address that I just put in the chat. Anybody have any questions? Has anybody used any of these sites before? Nobody wants to talk. Well, mainly Find a Grave has been around since the 90s. It's been around forever. There's a lot of cemeteries that I photographed years ago for Find a Grave, including this one here, Brush Arbor. I had done this one for Find a Grave way back in, I think, like 2014 or something like that. But it's not on BillionGraves yet because I haven't gone back to it yet to re-photograph it for BillionGraves. I've tried to redo all the ones that I did years ago for Find a Grave, but yeah, BillionGraves is relatively new. Find a Grave has been around forever.
So Dee Dee, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that these two sites will merge at some point, or do you think that they should continue to kind of serve their individual purposes?
I don't see them merging because Find a Grave is run on ads, and I think the person who runs it makes money off of it. And they also just have such a different purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Find a Grave is much more of a personal site with the flowers and the messages and linking family and all that kind of stuff. BillionGraves is purely an information site.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. BillionGraves is run by the same people that own Family Search. So that's one of the reasons why it's similar and it's free and they connect to records on Family Search. They're run by the same people. I think Find a Grave is owned by Ancestry now, but I'm not 100% on that. But I think Ancestry acquired it sometime in the past few years. They're associated with Ancestry somehow.
Yeah, because I think you can find on Ancestry links to Find a Grave information.
Yep. Ancestry will give you hints from Find a Grave. Family Search will give you hints from Find a Grave and BillionGraves.
Okay. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I just want to say thank you so much, Dee Dee. You did such a great job, and it was very informative and helpful.
Thanks. It's fun to talk about. I like spreading the gospel of recording cemeteries.
We will, as Dee Dee mentioned, have a recording available of this presentation after probably later today, and you can access it at any time after after we're done. We will have other programs coming up, so definitely stay tuned. Check out our Facebook page for further presentations. I hope everybody has a good day. So thank you again, Dee Dee.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming, and thanks for having me, Mona.